You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me on socials at SamLittle44 and the podcast at Maple Footy Pod. And now there's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, and welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. You already know, we the unofficial football podcast of the North, as we say in the intro. And before I even start with this episode, on Friday, we put up our interview with Vancouver FC midfielder Marcello. Go check that out if you haven't. Pause this, go check that one out. Make it a double feature if you want. Come back, watch this one, and we're all square and all good. It's one that I'm really proud of. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that if you have watched it, you've enjoyed it, and if you haven't watched it, I hope that you'll put aside the time to watch it. I think it's really good. It's worth the watch or listen. So yeah, definitely check that out. And outside of that, we are doing the weekly recap that we do here on Maple Footy. So why not start with injury updates? Because of course we got to start with injury updates because 2026 is the year of the injuries, I guess, for the men's national team. Last week, Luc de Fougerolles went out. I talked about in the podcast last week. He went out in a game with Dender. At the time of recording, we didn't know how serious the injury might have been. Word is apparently it's not super serious, only going to keep him sidelined for a couple of weeks. We'll still most likely miss this March window, which is a shame, because this is the last real window before the World Cup. I know we have those two friendlies in June before the World Cup, but I kind of lumped that together with the World Cup itself, because it's going to be the same squad. These guys aren't going to have any time together from March to June now. But regardless, hopefully it is correct. He's only going to be out for a couple weeks because our defense is currently depleted on injuries, which is phenomenal. Speaking of some other defenders, our biggest defender, our biggest player, our captain, Alphonso Davies. I talked about this in a social media exclusive. I say exclusive like it's like the secret club. It was the first ever social media exclusive clip that we kind of did, and it was talking about the injury bug running rampant throughout the men's national team. So I kind of already talked about this on my Instagram, TikTok, whatnot, Maple Footy Pod. But Alphonso Davies returned for Bayern Munich after a short spell on the sideline, only to come on in a 6-0 win versus Atalanta in the Champions League. Grabbed an assist, but also left the pitch injured yet again. He looked very distraught, looked very bothered, and one can imagine why. It's been just a terrible year for Alphonso Davies with injuries. Of course, the ACL kept him out for most of it. Then he came back from the ACL. Then he injured muscle fibers, and now it's looking like he's re-injured said muscle fibers. So hopefully we get Alphonso Davies healthy before the World Cup. I do think that this is bad that he was rushed back so quickly when there was no need to. And he's going to be another one that's going to miss this March window as well, which is a big shame because you would want your captain, your star player, to be at least the last international window before the World Cup. But regardless, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Jesse Marsch basically confirmed that he wasn't going to be in the March window. So I do think that this does suck for Alphonso Davies. I honestly just feel bad for him at this point. It's been just such a tough year for him with the injuries. So hoping that he can come out the other side of this, especially right before the World Cup. You know how much this World Cup means to him. So hopefully we can get Alphonso Davies back before the World Cup and let him play in the World Cup in his own country. Elsewhere, though, a little bit positive injury update here. Derek Cornelius, as per a Celtic fan account on Twitter, is back in full training with Rangers. I think that is splendid. I'm very happy about that. Derek Cornelius, one of the most underrated guys in our squad, and he really stepped in and stepped up well at the end of last year when all of our defense was out except for him. And then, of course, he ended up going out. But he stepped in really well at the end of last year to really become the guy in our defense. So happy that he's back. It's been a lengthy layoff for him. He hasn't played since November. Hoping, once again, that he can stay healthy and fit. And hopefully he can get back before the World Cup and get back to playing adequate amount of minutes before said World Cup. So a little bit of other news, kind of transfer news, kind of sacking news. We'll get into it. So in terms of the CPL, Ali Musi, didn't see this one coming, is staying with Cavalry. Happy about it. He's a great player for the league and for the team, but it looked like he was pretty much gone. His contract had run out. They had confirmed that he was leaving the club. So obviously that's not the case anymore. He's coming back. I think this is a very good, I was going to say but I suppose keep for Cavalry, because he is such a crucial player for them, has been crucial for them during his entire time with the club. He's one of those exciting players in the CPL that you like to watch, that kind of get you off your seat, is how I like to describe his type of player, where they got all the fancy tricks and whatnot, and he's got great footwork and has scored some absolute worldies in the past. So he's one of those players where it's you want to tune in, you want to see what he's doing. So I think this is very big for both Cavalry and the CPL to keep him here. So happy for him, happy for Calgary. I think this is just a very smart piece of business. Elsewhere, though, in the MLS, Orlando have sacked Oscar Pereira, their head coach. And I'm saying this because Maxime Crepeau plays for Orlando City. So this kind of affects one of our big-time players heading into this World Cup. I wonder what this kind of does for Crepeau. Is he still going to be the number one? I don't want to sit here and speculate, but we have seen in the past coaches come in and kind of just drop players. Hopefully that's not the case for Maxime Crepeau. I don't think it will be. But regardless, still just something to think about. The assistant coach is now going to be the interim caretaker manager for the time being until Orlando sorts it out. But yeah, this is not the ideal way for Crepeau to start his career in Orlando. I don't think currently, they were winless with Crepeau in net, and then, of course, they just won over the weekend against Montreal, but we'll get into that a little bit more when I talk about the MLS Canadian teams. But yeah, really, really difficult time, I think, right now at Orlando City, just because not a great start to the season, now immediately sacking your coach pretty much out the gate. Doesn't bode well for potentially the season ahead, but who knows? Maybe I'm proven wrong. We are only 4 games into the season now, so maybe whoever takes over as manager can really turn this around for Orlando, and we can see them kind of climb up the table. Elsewhere, in the NWSL, Janine Sonis made her debut with Denver in their first ever game, so it was technically everyone's debut for Denver. I'm saying this because she also grabbed the first assist for the club, and she was the captain on the day, and also grabbed the first ever sending off in the club's history. So it was a big day of first for one of our Canadian women. But yeah, really, really, really good to see Denver. I mean, the stadium was packed as well, which is great to see that the city's getting behind the team. We have a couple other Canadians playing there as well. Of course, Emma Regan, Janine Sonis, and yeah, very good to see them kind of have this home and get the support right out the gate at Denver. So yeah, and congrats to Sonis for being the captain on the club's first ever day and for grabbing the first ever assist in the club, and maybe a piece of history she probably doesn't want, but also the first ever sending off. And then, of course, one of our other women, Kadisha Buchanan, started her first game for Chelsea's women's side in the League Cup final, where they did win, and it was her first start since 2024, following just another injury-riddled player for us over the last year or so. So really happy for her. Good for her to be back in, and then, of course, add another trophy to her cabinet. And one final update. Our men's national team announced their kit for the 2026 World Cup. Red kit with a big maple leaf kind of shaded into it. And then the away kit, or the third kit, is the black with like broken ice kind of over it. Looks pretty cool in my opinion. So yeah, just thought I'd throw that out there too before I get into some performance-based things. All right. Let's take a little flight to Europe, specifically England, and then we'll get into the other European boys as well. But Abram Pebble grabbed another big-time performance. I was going to say goal, but he got grabbed 2 goals against Wigan. Now, the question has to be asked now. I know I kind of mentioned this last episode. Is he World Cup bound? He might be, with the lack of form for some of our strikers, and then, of course, the injuries throughout the squad. Could he be World Cup bound? maybe. I think that if he gets called up in the March window, I think that his chances really skyrocket for being at the World Cup. But if he's not called in the March window, I don't see him being at the World Cup, just because I don't think that Jesse Marsch would call him in June exclusively for his first ever international window being the World Cup. I could be wrong. We'll see. But yeah, I will say if he's in the March window, I do think that his chances are well up for being called for the World Cup. If not, I don't see it happening, regardless of really how many goals he scores. This is now 14 goals in all competitions for him. So a very good season with him at Plymouth. Maybe we can see him get a transfer up the divisions, or maybe elsewhere in Europe. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, really great season from him so far. Definitely giving Jesse Marsch maybe something to at least think about going into this March window that is kind of quickly approaching, actually. Elsewhere, one of our other strikers, Cyle Larin. I'm the conductor of the Cyle Larin train. I ain't hopping off this baby until the wheels fall off, Kyle. But he grabbed the equalizer for the Saints against West Brom in the 91st minute in a 1-1 draw. So that's a big moment for Kyle. That's his third goal with the Saints since joining them in January. So not terrible. That's, I think, 3 goals in 8 games off the top of my head. It's definitely 3 goals. It might be in either 8 or 9 games for them. But regardless, still a very good moment, I guess, to shine for the Saints. He's definitely adapting well so far to life in England. 3 goals ain't too shabby either. So yeah, definitely another guy to watch for this World Cup. He, as you know, if you've listened to the podcast, I would bring him for this World Cup just for the experience. The experience alone, I think, is invaluable. And then, of course, you add in he's kind of hitting form right now. Our other strikers aren't really super in form. A lot of injuries in the squad. I don't see a world, unless he, of course, hopefully, but if he picks up an injury, that would be the only reason I wouldn't bring him. But me personally, I think that Cyle Larin should be on the plane for the 2026 World Cup, especially if he continues scoring. Because right now, 3-8, that's about 1 every 3 games. That's not a terrible record coming into a mid-season Southampton side, new league and everything. That's not a terrible goal tally, really, when you put everything into perspective, in my humble opinion. Elsewhere in England, the Liam Millar Hive was buzzing, baby, because in a huge game for Hull City against Wrexham, both teams, of course, pushing for those playoff spots. This was a big game. Liam Millar grabbed the game-winning assist against Wrexham, second goal of a 2-1 win. It's what he does. So yeah, the Hive was buzzing, of course. Liam Millar proved that of all the Canadians involved that night, both him and Ryan Reynolds, Liam Millar outdid him, But genuinely, really big moment for Liam Millar. Huge moment for Hull as well, especially considering that then they lost their next game 3-0. So this game ended up being a bit more important because those points are going to be very valuable, because this promotion race in the English Championship right now could genuinely go any which way. So getting as many points as you can is huge. And like I said, then they won against Wrexham, then dropped against West Brom. Not ideal to drop right after, but still, at least of the last 2 games, they got a win in there, especially against someone who is also actively battling them for those promotion spots. So not only did they get 3 points, they took 3 points away from one of their competitors, if you will. And just, once again, super happy it was Liam Millar that grabbed the assist. It was a great ball in. Corner came in, kind of gets headed out by Wrexham. And then Liam Millar picks it up on the left flank, whips in a perfect cross for his teammate. Great header. And then into the back of the net. Love to see it. Liam Millar Hive, we're buzzing all day long with that one. Elsewhere in the championship, another one of our Canadian boys was making noise. Ali Ahmed scored for Norwich against Jebbo's Preston. So since Ali Ahmed has come in, Norwich were 1 point off the relegation zone. Now they have moved well up the table. And they genuinely... I don't see it happening, but honestly, with the way that the championship playoffs are going right now, it could happen. You could actually see Norwich maybe make a push for those promotion playoffs. Either way, though, even if they make those playoff spots or not, this has been nothing but a positive second half to the season for Norwich, thanks to signings like Ali Ahmed, and then a lot of their other signings that they made as well have really come in, just hit the ground running, have helped this team get out that relegation battle. And now, as I said, regardless of if they make that promotion spot, I think next season they go into it really positive if they, if these guys can all replicate what they're doing right now going into next season. I do think that we're going to be seeing a very exciting Norwich outlet, and I think it's going to be really good, especially for a player like Ali Ahmed, who's just been on the rise for Canada. Super happy for him. I always say I'm super happy for these guys. Sorry, I don't mean to make myself laugh. But yeah, really, really happy for Ali Ahmed. I do really like this move in hindsight. I know I was, I wouldn't say critical, I was a bit skeptical of the move when it first happened, but now seeing how good he's done, how good Norwich have done with him, he's made me eat my words. So yeah, really happy for Ali Ahmed. Big goal against, sadly, one of our other Canadian boys. Elsewhere in France, Jason Russell-Rowe started his first game for Toulouse. Nothing really huge to report on here, but still glad that he got his first start. Hopefully this is a sign of things to come. Once he gets more starts, more minutes, maybe we see some goals start piling in for Jason Russell-Rowe. So big moment for him over the weekend. In Spain, Tajon Buchanan went the full 90 for Villarreal in a 1-1 draw. Tanny got in for the last 10 minutes as well. Tajon Buchanan looked quite good. So very happy with that. You already know. If you couldn't tell, I'm a pretty big Tajon fan. So really, I know I keep on saying this about Taj, but this has been a very positive move for him throughout this season. I think we're seeing some of the best of Tajon Buchanan. He needed this following that Inter spell, and he's done very well. It's good to see that Villarreal are really placing a lot of trust into him, letting him start a lot of games. He's repaying them with big performances, big goals, some assists. So really happy with that. For Tani Oluwaseyi, another striker that's kind of finding it hard to come by for playing time at the moment, which I think may have been expected when he did make this move to Villarreal. I don't think many of us thought he'd be starting for Villarreal right away, or maybe at all. But just as a Canadian, I'm looking going, okay, we need our guys to be playing, But I do think that this has still been a positive move for Tanny because, one, playing in La Liga is instantly a step up from pretty much 99% of other leagues in the world. So already playing in La Liga with a well-respected team like Villarreal, chasing UCL football, those are all net positives. The only negative is he's not starting a whole ton, and we need our guys to be starting. But regardless, it's at least good that he's still getting into games. He's not just rotting on the bench. He's still at least getting on for 10, 15, 20 minutes in games. So those are also very valuable moments and minutes for Tani Oluwaseyi. Finishing up in Europe with another striker who is not having the best of times right now. Jonathan David only played a handful of minutes for Juve at the weekend. He came on the 91st minute in a 1-0 win. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but he's fallen out of form again right at a very crucial time that we didn't want him to fall out of form. To reiterate what I've always said, I do think that he will make this work. Maybe it won't be with Juventus. Maybe he will get a move elsewhere. But I do think Jonathan David will make this work. He's too good of a player for him to not make it work. I think that this will work for him. It's just he's found himself in a very tough moment with the form, and just right ahead of a very crucial tournament, you can't help but be a little bit concerned that one of our biggest players, one of our best players, one of our most important players is currently out of form and out of favor a little bit with Juve. He got hooked in the last game right at halftime, then only plays for about 2 minutes in this past weekend's game. So you look and you go, ooh, that's not great. But I do still think come the end of this season, going into next season, I think that he can turn it around. Maybe I'm just biased. Maybe I'm optimistic. But hey, don't we need a little bit of that sometimes? Elsewhere, coming back to North America now, LAFC. But Sam, They're not Canadian. Yeah, but they're our honorary Canadian team this year. We have 4 Canadian MLS teams this year. One of them just so happens to play in LA because, of course, we have 5 Canadians playing on the team. So they're our 4th Canadian team in the MLS. They drew in their first leg in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, 1-1, setting up a tasty tie for the second leg. And hopefully, I do think that they should be able to pull this one out the hat, kind of say, because they do have quite the quality team. I just think they kind of got CONCACAF'd a little bit in the first leg, but I do think second leg they have a very strong team. They've looked very good all season. I do think that they'll go through, but of course anything is possible. Elsewhere, the Sounders. The only note I have for this: Sounders destroy Caps 3-0. And that's probably the most adequate way I could probably put it, because this was just not a good performance from the Caps, especially at home in the Champions Cup. It was not a good performance, really, at all. I think it's a shame because they have started the season quite well, but they also would want to get back to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. Try saying that 5 times fast. After last year's results, so they probably wanted to get back after that. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. Once again, as I just said, anything is possible. We have seen teams come back from big deficits in 2-legged affairs. So I'm going to say it could happen, but I think it's a little bit unlikely. Sorry to my Whitecaps fans out there. And trust me, I want them to do well as well, because the more Canadian teams doing well, the better it is for us. But they are still doing well elsewhere, as we'll get into for their league result this past weekend in just a little bit. And then another Canadian did pretty well in the Champions Cup. Dane St. Clair kept a clean sheet for Inter Miami against Nashville in a 0-0 draw. He made 2 very good saves, so not a bad week for Big Dog Dane and his race to try to become our number 1 for the national team going into the World Cup. But yeah, 2 very, very good saves that helped ensure his clean sheet for Inter Miami. And that's his first clean sheet off the top of my head there. That's his first clean sheet. So that is definitely going to do him the world of good with confidence, I think, as well. All right, now into our MLS performances over the weekend. The Portland Timbers, will start with them because Kamal Miller and James Pantemis both started and finished the game with Portland. They lost an absolute heartbreaker to Houston Dynamos. 3-2 final score. The third goal for Houston was scored in the 90th plus 15 after all the extra time and stoppages. That's just that's brutal. Like, that is a brutal way to lose a game. But I do think that concerns have to be brought up about Portland not being able to keep goals out at the moment. It feels like every weekend they're conceding at least more than 2 at the moment. This was Kamal's second start of the season, so maybe he's a little bit, not blaming him at all. That's my center back. That's my number 4. I'm not blaming Kamal, but maybe he's a bit rusty still a little bit. James Pantemis hasn't looked phenomenal just yet this season. I thought he looked pretty good last season. This season, he hasn't reached that level yet, I don't think, just yet, at least. I do still think quality goalkeeper. I think he will be able to turn around. But currently, with that number 3 spot still undecided with the men's national team, he is definitely one of the names that you would expect to be in that spot. So for him to kind of be starting the season a little bit all over the place, I guess, is not an ideal way to start said season. But hopefully him and Portland can all turn it around. Elsewhere, for Sporting Kansas City, very happy about this. Steven Afrifra, Canadian boy, making some noise, grabs the game-winning assist against LA Galaxy in a 2-1 win. Very happy for him. Came off the bench looking like they're back to reintegrating him into the squad. After last season, he wasn't really used a whole ton. Very happy to see him back in the squad. I do think he is a quality player, and his quality showed on the weekend. Came on, made a huge difference for the team. Very happy for him. Zoran Basong, noticeably absent again, 4 for 4 so far this season, that he has not been involved with the squad. No report that I've seen saying injury, but one has to believe it's got to be an injury if he's been out for 4 games. Of course, once again, don't want to sit here and speculate because who knows what it could be. But just, my head going, well, injury bug's running rampant right now. might be injury. Hopefully, whatever it is, though, he's doing okay and he is doing well. Hopefully, he'll get to be back soon, too, because we want to see him playing. But, of course, whatever it may be, hoping that he is okay and sending him all the good vibes that we can. Elsewhere, going back to LAFC now, the biggest talking point, I think, of the weekend for Canadians, Mathieu Choinière stepped into the starting 11 for the first time in the MLS this season, grabbed 2 goals, not 1, but 2, against St. Louis. Ryan Raposo also started. I believe that's also his first start of the MLS season as well. So very happy for Mathieu Choinière. Huge moment for him to step up too, because LAFC had rotated a lot of their team following the CONCACAF tie and then prepping for the next CONCACAF tie. They rotated a lot, so Choinière gets a start, which I think is very good. It also showed that he can step in and step up at these moments, just because literally last episode I had said, if you're Mathieu Choinière, maybe you're a bit concerned with the lack of playing time that could come from Stefan Eustáquio being in, Marky Delgado looking good. But he gets his playing time in this game. Not only does he score 2 very, very good goals. If you haven't seen him, check them out on LAFC's Instagram. Very nice goals. But then he also just looked very good as well. It was a very good all-round performance, Choinière. What I really like about Choinière is he always seems to be able to, you ask him to do anything, and he can do it. You need him to track back, he'll do it. You need him to properly defend, he'll do it. You need him to attack, he'll do it. You need him to control the tempo of a game. Guess what? He'll do it. He's such a malleable player, I think, in that sense, and just such a good player to have for Canada, especially once again ahead of this 2026 World Cup, where our midfield looks probably the best it has in quite some time. You got, of course, Stefan Eustáquio, Ishmael Kone looking unreal, Mathieu Choinière looking good, Nathan Saliba looking good. I think my bear, Jonathan Osorio, has had a great start to this season, and I know I'm probably definitely forgetting guys, but that's all off the top of my head right there. So yeah, really, really good for Mathieu Choinière. Our midfield looking really good at the moment, giving Jesse Marsch, I think, a few things to think about at least. But yeah, big time performance from Mathieu Choinière, big time brace, 2 very nice goals, and shout out Ryan Raposo for also getting the start as well. So wrapping this one up, I say wrapping this one up as if we don't have probably minimum 5 more minutes left, probably a bit more than that, let's be real, but we're wrapping it up with our last segment, talking about our Canadian teams in the MLS. We're going to start with Montreal, who lost at the weekend 2-1 to Orlando. And sorry, just pulling up my notes here. They didn't look terrible, I don't think. I thought they actually looked pretty good in spurts of the game. Where I thought they moved the ball around. I thought that some of the team chemistry was kind of looking a bit better than it has during the start of this season for Montreal. But I think what really let them down was the defense a little bit, and I praised the defense last week in their win over the Red Bulls, but I do really think that both these goals you're going to look and you're going to go, maybe we could have done a little bit better in these instances. Prince, though, grabs another goal for the season, so that's good. I also thought their midfield looked quite good. Longstaff and Lotari, I thought, complement each other well, and then I think when Samuel Piette came on, he also looked quite good. So I don't think it was all negative for Montreal, which, at least in their other defeats this season, you could say it was pretty well all negative. This one, I don't think it was all negative. I really don't. I think that there were some positives to take away from this game, but definitely still a lot that needs to change for Montreal going forward to really help them turn this club around at the moment, because it's still looking quite bleak at the moment. But I will say, on a side note, this was Orlando's first win of the season. Maxime Crepeau, of course, did not play. He was serving his 1-game suspension following his red card. So that also said he doesn't get to play against his former club. But regardless, that doesn't really matter. But in a week where Dane St. Clair looked very good for Inter Miami, Maxime Crepeau not getting the chance to play, does that kind of sway it for Jesse Marsch? Who knows? All these questions we have to keep asking ahead of the March and World Cup here. So we will wait and see what the goalkeeping situation is. But yeah, this one was tough, I think, for CF Montreal. Now we're going to look at TFC, because there's a bit to talk about here as well. Another team that dropped points. This was, I think, 2 points dropped as opposed to 1 point gained, because I thought this was their game to win. I thought they looked quite good on the day as well. Moved the ball around really nice. A lot of the players linked up really well. Shalai looked good. Mihailovic looked really good. Oso, Lorea, Silafuente. I really like that pairing of Silafuentes and Oso in the midfield, by the way, too. I think that they really complement each other quite well. Defensively, I thought TFC looked pretty sound. A lot of great last-ditch tackles, really showing that they didn't want to lose this game, which is nice because, over the last couple seasons with TFC, you've watching them. Do they care if they win or lose? But this game, it actually looked like they were showing heart, they were showing effort, which as a fan, you have to go, okay, at least they're showing something for us. Zimmerman, I thought looked really good. He is, I think, settling in nicely so far. Those first couple games looked a bit shaky, but now it looks like he's finding his footing a little bit, looking quite good. So yeah, I think if this game stopped about a minute before it did, we'd be looking at this going, good game from TFC. But of course, it didn't stop a minute before it did because there was another minute to play. And corner comes in from Red Bulls, and you just had that feeling in your stomach that TFC were going to concede. Ball doesn't really get cleared properly. Then no one picks up Choupo-Moting, who has still a lot to do just with how crowded the box is, but an effort that he will go and take and say thank you very much. I think this is a shame too, because I do think TFC, for the most part, outside of really that moment, did enough to get the clean sheet, but that just does show you have a moment, a lapse in concentration, you're going to get punished at this level, and that's kind of exactly what happened here. I do want to shout out Gavarin. I thought this was his best performance so far in a TFC kit as the number one. He looked very good, made some huge saves, and I think he definitely earned a clean sheet. Sadly, he did not get one. And a word on Josh Sargent, who did make his debut for TFC, the $20 million man. Not a whole ton to say on it because he came on about 25 minutes. I think TFC was really struggling to get him the ball. He was taking up quite good spaces and occupying good spots, making some good runs for TFC in his cameo, I suppose you can say. But yeah, it just wasn't really getting found a whole ton. And I'll be interested to see maybe come the next 4 or 5 games, one, with how much he starts and how good he looks come the end of maybe that little spell, because I think he's really going to need to hit the ground running here because a lot has been placed onto Josh Sargent's shoulders. There we go. Because, of course, big price tag, DP, TFC, he's like the piece of the rebuild, the big piece of this rebuild this season. So I really do think that he's going to need to really hit the ground running, especially with the media already kind of on his back, really hyping him up, because what the media loves to do is hype these guys up just to tear them down. So that's what I'm expecting from Josh Sargent if he doesn't get a ton of goals right out the gate, because that's exactly what the media does. They hype him up. Oh man, he's the best thing since sliced bread, and then he doesn't get 12 goals in his first 20 minutes, and they go, is he even that good anyways? So for him and for TFC, I do hope that he hits the ground running, does really well. But I think that these next 5 games will be pretty indicative, I think, just because he's going to be settling in. You're going to see how they play with him. You got to assume within the next couple games he will starting. He's healthy. The only reason he's not starting, one has to believe, is he just hasn't been there long enough. So you got to believe come next weekend or the weekend following, he'll be starting for TFC. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Josh Sargent's debut. Not a whole ton to say on his debut as a whole, but a lot to talk about on as far as the outside noise goes, I suppose. So finally, we have one more team to talk about. The Vancouver Whitecaps. And this was a 6-star performance from them. See what I did there? Instead of saying 5 stars, I said 6 because they won 6-0. This was the exact response I think you would want from the Whitecaps following a very disappointing result midweek. They come out here, and this game was all about Minnesota because they had James Rodriguez on the bench ready to make his debut. So all the talk and all the chatter was about Minnesota. So really good to see the Whitecaps kind of flip the script, make it so that this game was about them, kind of erase a little bit that disappointment of the midweek game with a huge performance here. Goals from, let me read them all out, Sebastian Berhalter, Brian Wright, Laborda, Sabi, Brian Wright again, and Sabalé. Really, really good performance. I mean, what can you really say about a 6-0? Yeah, it was disappointing. I don't think they were that good. Obviously they were quite good. They pumped Minnesota for 6. So not a bad performance at all. This is the Whitecaps that we know. This is the Whitecaps that we've been seeing for most of this season and a lot of last season. Of course, they never really scored 6, but point being, the Whitecaps that go out there, control a game, dominate a game, look very, very good throughout said game, and then grab the 3 points. So very good from them, and did most of it without Thomas Muller, which I think is also a good point to prove is, yeah, we can still play without our number one guy, which I think is very good. Muller came on in the 77th. They already had all 6 goals, But yeah, I think that is at least maybe subconsciously a little bit, or at least in a way of coverage of it's not just the Thomas Muller team, which if you follow the Whitecaps, they're not just the Thomas Muller team. But for maybe people that don't follow them as much, you look and you go, oh, okay, wow, so they're good with and without Thomas Muller, which I think is quite important for the Whitecaps to be able to go out there and do. So yeah, big, big, big win for the Vancouver Whitecaps, 6-0. You don't see that every day. And with all that being said, I think that's where we're going to end this one. I do hope you enjoyed it. Once again, check out that Marcello Polizzi interview if you have not yet. And if you have, maybe go on and give it a second listen or watch. I do hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for listening. Follow us on the socials and whatnot, Maple Footy Pod everywhere. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to this. And outside of that, until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates. Remember to support Canadian football, be kind, and until next time, live, laugh, little.